Hey guys, I'm super excited to have you here today. Thanks for joining this training. It's about to be an eye-opening session. But before we dive in, let me quickly introduce myself so you know what exactly and why exactly this is worth your time. Back in 2018, fresh out of college, I was working in a construction company, earning little to nothing, struggling to actually communicate my ideas. I knew I had value to offer, but every time I stood in front of a room, my words practically fell flat. My ideas, my slides were literally a mess. And it took me 2 whole weeks to prepare a 5 minutes presentation back in 2018. Still, nobody really listened. Now, fast forward to now, this one skill changed everything. I've grown my career 7 times in just 6 years. I've grown from that struggling employee to a global talent, presented to leaders across different continents. To surprise you that my first passport only had one stamp, and that was Benin Republic. But in just the last 3 years, I've presented in 6 countries across Africa, Asia, and Europe. But the biggest win, I've been invited into rooms I never thought I would enter. Not just because I had something valuable to say actually, but because I learned how to present in a way that made people listen. Today, I'm pulling back the curtain and showing you exactly how I did it, step by step. No fluff, no complicated stories or theories, but just real practical strategies that you can start using immediately. So stick with me to the end, pay close attention, and I promise you'll walk away with something that could completely transform your career. All right, guys, let's get started. Hey guys, I'm super excited to have you here today. Thanks for joining this training. It's about to be an eye-opening session. But before we dive in, let me quickly introduce myself so you know what exactly and why exactly this is worth your time. Back in 2018, fresh out of college, I was working in a construction company, earning little to nothing, struggling to actually communicate my ideas. I knew I had value to offer, but every time I stood in front of a room, my words practically fell flat. My ideas, my slides were literally a mess. And it took me 2 whole weeks to prepare a 5 minutes presentation back in 2018. Still, nobody really listened. Now, fast forward to now, this one skill changed everything. I've grown my career 7 times in just 6 years. I've grown from that struggling employee to a global talent, presented to leaders across different continents. To surprise you that my first passport only had one stamp, and that was Benin Republic. But in just the last 3 years, I've presented in 6 countries across Africa, Asia, and Europe. But the biggest win, I've been invited into rooms I never thought I would enter. Not just because I had something valuable to say actually, but because I learned how to present in a way that made people listen. Today, I'm pulling back the curtain and showing you exactly how I did it, step by step. No fluff, no complicated stories or theories, but just real practical strategies that you can start using immediately. So stick with me to the end, pay close attention, and I promise you'll walk away with something that could completely transform your career. All right, guys, let's get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Ayomide Otokiti, and I am excited. I'm super excited to actually be here today to be on this call. I'm super excited to have you all on this call today. Kindly comment wherever you're joining from, location, wherever it is, maybe Nigeria, outside of the country, wherever it is you're joining from, just kindly comment and drop your comments in the comment section, right? So let's get right into it. So in the last, I think, 6 years of my professional career, I've actually had so many skills that I've had to leverage to actually grow in my career in the last 6 years. And I've moved in my career 7 times in 6 years, right? It is super amazing even for me as well. So I try to like audit myself to understand where exactly, what exactly is making me stand out. I think a friend of mine has also asked me before, working with maybe international persons, working with people in the global setting, working with people from different racial background, right? What exactly sets you out? And why is it that you're able to move within your career so fast, right? And I try to also think back, do a bit of retrospective to understand what's this one skill that practically might be setting me apart. So I literally now got to understand that of all these skills, I have one skill to which seems to be super important. And I've gotten to understand that until we basically master the art of presentation, right? Because based on studies that I've seen, it has been said that employees who master the art of presentation are more likely to be 3 times seen as high potentials. This means they have the potential to grow in their career faster, right? And I realized that this is one thing that I've learned to perfect in the last 6 years of my career. So this is not me saying there are so many other skills that exist for you to actually be a high flyer. Doesn't mean it is not relevant. But what I'm trying to say is if you think hard work is only what guarantees success, you might want to rethink, because trust me, that is not the only thing that actually guarantees success, right? That's not the only strategy to win, right? So this is me going to literally walk you through this one skill that has transformed my career. This is me walking through one thing that has brought me to this level in just 6 years, being able to move up the career ladder about 7 times, right? You have to understand that visibility and perception matters. If you think it's just hard work, no, that's definitely not just it. You have so many skills, you're good at your job, there's so many things you can do as a professional, but there's this one skill you need to leverage, right? And that is why I've literally created this training to tell you about this one skill that has skyrocketed my career, my 9 to 5 career in just 6 years. This has literally helped me to increase my income 10 times in 6 years. This is massive for me because I know where I started from, right? And maybe as we walk through the presentation, you understand that everyone actually has a story to tell. Everyone has where they literally started from, right? So this is one thing that you literally need to understand, that aside knowing how to do the job, it becomes a topic of how well can you communicate what you know how to do to the people that matter, to the people that make the decisions, right? And I'm super excited once again. My name is Ayomi Diotokita. I'm super excited to have you on this call. I'm super excited to be here, to be sharing my journey with you, to be sharing this particular one skill with you guys on today's call, right? So now let's get right into it. Yeah. So it is very important for us to understand some things. Like I said, everybody has their story. So this is me, and I won't be surprised if my picture maybe turns to a meme. For those that know me now, and probably those that have known me before, you know that there's a clear difference. So this is me back then in 2018, barely earning little to nothing. Actually, it was a struggle because I was working in the construction firm back then. If anybody that is conversant with Lagos, Nigeria, Oshodi to be precise, there's this bus interchange you have at Oshodi. So I once worked there, and I can remember I worked there as a safety person, but then at some point I also needed to learn how to weld so that I could also be more helpful to the team. So this was a whole lot of struggle going every day. And I knew that for someone that probably finished from a private institution or finished with the first class, I felt that I literally had more to offer. And I'm just here carrying iron, welding iron. Someone here on the call, I remember. So I was somewhere yesterday, and then we were talking about iron bender, iron shaker, and stuff like that, right? So I was an iron bender back then, welding irons together and stuff, right? So it was pretty difficult because you're earning little to nothing but putting in so much of energy to this work. And this is me now in 2024, right? I've had opportunities, and I'll call it opportunities because we literally have things to leverage. We have what we like call privileges, right? I find myself to also have privileges based on this skill set. So many people might also have this skill or might not have the privilege. So I've had opportunities to give presentations places in Europe, across Africa, and even in Asia, right? So this is me in Thailand making a presentation. This is me in Spain also making a presentation. Now, this is 2 different times apart, right? 2018 to 2024 is 6 years apart, and it's been quite massive for me, right? Having to grow in this short period of time. I mean, so many people might have also started out like me, but literally they are still struggling to find their path, and that's why I created something like this to actually make you understand that as much as you have the good ideas, as much as you can be extremely competent, as much as you have this one very brilliant person, trust me, you would just be behind the scene throughout your career journey if you don't have visibility, if people don't have this perception of you that, okay, this person is good. It's one thing to be good, but it's another thing to be perceived as good. It's another thing to be visible to those that make the decisions, right? And this is just me walking you through my journey far back as 2018, and now telling you where I am currently. This is 2024. It's been a massive journey, struggling back then, and now being able to like make presentations on global stage, entering rooms that I never even believed I could enter. Right. So I can remember back then in 2018 when I was able to rack up funds, and my passport then was just a stamp of Benin Republic. I mean, I was super proud of it because I believe that was the first time I was also leaving the country just to get this passport stamp. I mean, how would you get a passport of how many pages and then till it expires, there's really no stamp on it? Not to. So I said, at least if it's not going to be the hard copied kind of passport, let me go down to Benin Republic where at least I'll see this normal stamp on my passport. So I traveled down to Benin Republic. But now I'm looking at myself in the last 3 years, and I realized that based on this one skill, which has created visibility for me, I've moved across several countries, across Africa, across Europe, across Asia, and I've had to make presentations in the last couple of years, just last 2.5 years thereabout. It has been massive for me, right? So this is one skill I want you to tighten your seatbelt, as the case may be. Listen in, and trust me, you're going to be living with practical examples of how you can actually transform your career with this one skill, right? So now let's get into some very important stats, which I want you to understand because many of us don't know this, right? And it is me trying to explain to you what is this skill and why is it important. So there was a report or a survey that was done by Forbes, and they said 70% of employees say presentation skills are critical for their career success. The other 30% don't even know this yet, right? And this is quite funny, right? Because a lot of people actually go into their workspaces and they will literally do anything to avoid making a presentation. And this is something that we literally need to understand because honestly, I usually tell people now that there's been a story where everyone started from, but it is also important to understand that there is one thing that you need to do differently if you need to see a different result, right? And there's also something important which I've realized that top executives that you see now, they spend over 50% of their time persuading others through presentation. You realize that majority of the time, this is them actually spending 50% of their time presenting to the board, presenting to organization, attending conferences. This is creating a perception, trying to convince people, why do I invest in this business? Why do I go along with you on this journey, right? Now, it is super important because this one skill can actually transform your career. And it is interesting to know that just 70% of employees, based on this survey, because I know not everybody must have carried out the survey, just 70% of employees say that presentation skills are critical for career success because once in a lifetime opportunity presents itself, which I would also share my own personal experiences with you. Once in a lifetime opportunity presents itself, but unfortunately, are you able to seize that opportunity, right? Now, in the information age and time, you are only as valuable as the ideas that you have to share. So you might be so brilliant, like I said earlier, but you are only as valuable as the ideas that you have to share, right? And this is just one stat from Forbes, right? Now, another thing for those that are looking to start earning pretty well. One thing I've realized based on this is also premium statistics, right? This is a premium fact. 31% of full-time professionals with advanced presentation skills earn between $35,000 to $75,000 annually. Now, I'm not saying just know how to present and then you start earning this amount. Meaning, first of all, you know your stuff. Knowing your stuff and being competent is one space. But now, how exactly do people know that you know your stuff? This is the secret to it, right? 31% of full-time professionals with advanced presentation skills, meaning they know their stuff. Now, they are now able to communicate their stuff to people that make these decisions. How many of us maybe have watched this Dragons Den where people come to pitch their ideas? You see brilliant pitches that make people raise funds of over $500,000 and it's also a total amount of money. Yes, they might be doing the business so well, but are they able to sell it to investors to be able to buy into the idea and then they are able to put in their money? Now, the question to you now is, how much do you even earn and how much are you willing to earn? Because the possibilities are honestly endless. I earn well. I will tell you I earn well at the moment, but I think the possibilities of me earning more is super endless based on visibility, based on perception. And this is one skill that is going to give you that. So if you are still asking yourself, why exactly do I need to know this? First is I'm telling you,
70%, over 70% of professionals have said having these presentation skills is a prerequisite for career success. Number two is if you actually want to earn more, because we're in the Nigerian space, and for people also outside the Nigerian country, right, outside the country, joining from anywhere, you realize that this one skill is super important if you need to earn more, right? Now, on the last part of this is we discussing the future of work. There's a lot of buzz around product management, project management, data analytics, data engineer as being seen to be the future of work. Now, let me bust your bubbles, right? Yes, these are future of work skills, but I realized that there's so much of buzz around data analysis, and I'm also a data enthusiast, right? And I've realized that you could have so much of data being thrown around, like a lot of data is being thrown around. You've analyzed your data, you have so much of information. But honestly, it is going to make no sense, no valid sense, if you are not able to present the insight on those data, linking it back to how it makes business sense. What decisions do we need to make based on this data set? So you could have a pool of data somewhere, you analyze the data, you're able to turn the data upside down. But honestly speaking, if you cannot drag out those insights, present it to people that want to make the decisions based on this data that you've worked on, it is going to make no sense. So it's me saying, as the future of work is tending towards data analytics, data visualization, and a lot of things, this is one skill that you want to have as a carry-on, because as much as you analyze data and do a lot of analysis on your data sets, data engineering, and a lot of things, how you are able to present the insight from this data to make business decision at the end of the day is what matters the most. And you want to be able to do this brilliantly well, because now, like I said, 70% of companies anticipate that creative and analytical skills or thinking will become more important between 2023 and 2027. That means it is already important. This skill is already important. Analytical thinking is really important at the moment, which is why I mentioned data analytics, right? But it is super important that for you to be a proficient professional, right, you have to master the art of visual storytelling. You have to be able to link this data analytics skills, these critical thinking skills, complex information engagement. You must be able to link it up back to how to make these decisions by presenting it to those that are going to take the insight from this data that you've analyzed to make proper decisions. Right now, having said all this, these are stats that are probably open source. You can see anywhere, everywhere, if you decide to search for it, so that you understand the power of presentation. Now, I'm going to give you my own personal experiences, right? And I'm going to put it in 3 different perspectives. So for everyone who is joining this call, is a topic of, one, are you just starting out in your career? Or you might even be a student somewhere. Are you just starting out your career? You're just launching out or just starting out in the industry. Number 2 is you're an existing professional who maybe you're looking to even changing jobs or switching spaces within your current career space, right? Or number 3, you are actually a professional who is doing well, but what got you here is unable to get you there. That's the title of a book, right? If you find it, because most of the times we might have done things up until this point, but unfortunately, we're lacking one thing to move us from this point to this other point. So I will give you in these 3 perspectives with live examples. This is one thing that has happened to me that I've experienced in my own time. So number 1 is an opportunity that presented itself to me, which is more or less like when I started out my career. So this was pretty much during COVID. And then my boss then, when I was working in Port Harcourt, actually had COVID. It was quite unfortunate, right? So he had to be like moved out of the country. And this was me, because the way we came in as management trainees. We were still very young boys, like we didn't know what we were doing so much, right? So we came into the organization and my boss had COVID. He had to be moved out of the country. Then who now takes charge of the organization? Like who takes charge of the plant? And then being management training means they are training you to become managers. But I mean, we're still very young. Like we're just coming in, so we still needed a lot of guidance. But who cares? Meaning, this was one opportunity for me to set the first impression right. And this was pretty much during COVID. You had to make a lot of presentations as regards execution plan. How do you want to rotate people between the shifts? Because it was a factory, right? How do you want to move people? What is the plan for engagement? What are the things what's the project that is currently ongoing to ensure that you don't have cross-contamination? Because it was a food and manufacturing organization, right? So you don't want people being exposed. You don't want people, the food you're also selling out, people hearing that people that are making those things are getting COVID. So in a plant where you have 1,000 people, how exactly do you execute to ensure that 3 shifts don't come in contact with each other? So we needed to make a clear presentation and execution plan to the management team. And this was me still a fresh person out of school. This was my first job. And then we needed to do this. I was clueless because I knew that this one thing, if I actually get it right, was going to set the tone for me going forward. And truth be told, I leveraged on existing tools. I was able to maybe work with my colleague well then, made this presentation so well that we became a reference point. And it's actually set the tone for me going forward in my career, right? Joining that particular organization, because yes, I had to move to some other organizations afterwards. But then that was actually one thing that actually set the tone right for me in that particular organization. Now, that's one bit of it. When I, as a fresh graduate, you have to take these opportunities. And this is one skill, because probably for me, it was quite difficult then because I didn't have all the skills required. I didn't have all the resources and tools required. But that's why I'm here, apparently, to also guide you to what I've learned in the last 6 years and how to make it shorter for you. Why is knowing how to actually make proper presentations, present with clarity and purpose, super important. Now, the second thing is, I had a friend when I was transferred to Lagos at some point in time. So she was going to get married, and her husband was in Port Harcourt, right? So, no, her husband was in Abuja, meaning she had to quit her job. That was the best decision for her, anyways. She had to quit her job in Lagos and relocate to go and meet her husband in Abuja. This means she would need a new job when she gets to Abuja. Apparently, she had an organization in mind that she wanted to work with while she has done her research, and the organization seems to be based in Abuja. And then she reached out to me that I really need a job, right? Because I'm moving to Abuja. And she said, there's this organization I would like to work with. I've gone through their website, I've searched for their email address, and I've sent my CV and application to their email address directly, right? And she sent it. Fortunately for her, the email is being handled by the CEO of the organization by himself. So he goes through those emails. I don't know how they work or how they do that, their own thing. Probably still very much a startup. So fortunately for her, the CEO stumbled on this application and replied the email. Now he replied the email saying, I love your profile. I love your resume. Now I'm going to give you an assignment, which is more or less like a case study. Work on a case study, and then you come and present to myself and the members of my board, executive members of the board, to see if you are best fit for this job. And she sent me the email that she got from the CEO of the organization. Like, she's actually in a state that she cannot understand. Like, this presentation has to be made in a couple of days. How exactly do I first of all make the presentation? And secondly, how do I speak to this audience that they understand my point, they believe my point so well that they don't have a second option but to bring me on board. So we got on the presentation based on the existing tools I already have, created the presentation first, then walked her through how to present this thing to this organization with clarity and purpose. And the good thing is, she got the job, she got her dream job, and I think she's still working there as of now, or maybe she has moved to another job. I'm not so sure. But this is the point. You might be at a point where you also want to transition, and maybe you are to maybe even join an organization. Most organizations now will tell you to give a case study. I can remember at the point where I had to take an assessment center for KPMG, and I can remember so well because I didn't get the opportunity. We had to do an assessment center, and there was one guy there that they gave us. So what they do is, I think there are 3 sections. So they give you a group work, an individual one, and then there's one other one like that. The individual one is they just give you an abstract topic out of the blues, and they tell you, you are going to present this topic to us in 5 minutes. Go and use 2 minutes to prepare your points and come back to present to us. And this was one thing I didn't know anything about, because I was also fresh out of school then, just trying to get a job. And I missed out on that opportunity, because how to articulate my thoughts, how to actually make a presentation, land the message, one important message, and then add every other relevant point was very unclear to me. But at this point in time, it is no longer the case for me. This is what I'm saying. You might be at a point where you want to transition, and then you are lacking this one skill that could actually move you to another phase of your career, right? You want to leverage this skill of knowing how to make presentations, knowing how to communicate your ideas, and understanding the power of great presentation, because just that one presentation could actually change everything for you. Now, the last story is, there's a friend of a friend who I was told he was actually going to lose the job, right? So This was I knew my own friend. She was working in this organization, and they had been in the organization for quite some time, and they needed to move to maybe another level. So before you move to another level, you also have to maybe present to the board, make them understand what you've done so far, what impact you've had in the organization, what projects have you worked on. So this, my friend, we worked on a presentation together with one of our other friends. They presented, gave me the feedback that it really went well. Thank you so much for the support and stuff. I think I was on leave then, and then they reached out to me one early morning and said, AY, there's a problem. There's one of our guys, which apparently looks like they were not impressed with this presentation, and this is a deal breaker. If you cannot convince these people that you've actually added impact to the organization, you might be at a point where you're either moving up or you're leaving, right? So this was the case for this guy. So I was like, what do you guys want me to do? Okay, let's jump on a call. Let's rework this entire presentation. Let me walk him through how to present it with clarity and purpose. How exactly can he learn this information that they get the point of the value? Like I said, you might know your stuff, but then visibility and perception matters. If people don't see that you know your stuff, that might be the end for you. So I reworked the entire presentation, walked him through the entire presentation. How exactly do you take them from point A to point B and then close out on the presentation? The good thing is he didn't lose the job because they gave him a second chance. He made this presentation, and that was the selling point for him. They kept on, I think one of the feedback I got, that they kept on asking him, where exactly were you? Like, what was wrong with you in the initial presentation, and how come you have this amount of stuff that you literally could not deliver to us? And this is the main reason why I'm telling you this story, so that you know that at every point in time where you are in your career at the moment, this one skill seems to be important to anyone at any point in time. Top executives, like I said, spend 50% of their time trying to convince people to buy into the idea, to understand what they are currently doing. How much more if you're not yet a top executive and you want to move into that space? Because if you move into that space without leveraging this skill, then you might lose out in a very short period of time. Now, we've said a lot of things. I've given you a lot of stats. I've given you a lot of information. I've told you a lot of stories. It's also good for us to set the tone right? So if you're on this presentation and or on this call now and you feel this presentation is going to make me a pro overnight, sorry to burst your bubbles, but honestly, this call is not for you, because yes, you can be a pro, but not overnight, because you have to actually invest time into learning the ropes. Yeah, you can cut the time short, but not just like maybe you join courses and they say make $1 million in 1 week. Trust me, those quick money making schemes, this is not where it is. So this is not for you. And if you feel you want to become a pro overnight, probably you should just drop off the call. Now, secondly, if you're not ready to invest some time to learning the ropes, trust me, I would also advise that you don't bother about this, because this is not a game where you just want to start today and then you become a pro tomorrow, like I said earlier, right? And also, if you don't believe, based on everything I've said and the information I've given to you, in the space of creating a first impression, which could actually set the tone for you in your career. Secondly, it might be you making a change in your career. Or thirdly, it might be you also moving up the career ladder. If you don't believe that you can actually grow your income in this space, right? Because if you set a first impression right, it means you are most liable to get these promotions very fast. Number two is, if you want to make this change, and then, because most of the time now is case studies, right? You have to make case studies, do presentations, and then you get the job. That's even what is in vogue at the moment, right? They will not just ask you questions in interviews. You most likely have to work on case studies and present your findings. So if you don't believe you can actually grow your income by learning this skill, probably this call is also not for you. And I will just advise, so that it doesn't look like a waste of your time, to drop off the call. Now, this training session is for you if you're a professional who is just starting out, or even an existing professional, like I've given all the examples, and you want to grow. If you really are keen about growing, investing just a little amount of time to learning the ropes, which I would also show you in subsequent spaces, right? You will definitely perfect this skill. So if you're a professional who is starting out or an experienced one, this call is for you. Now, if you want to also master the art of visual storytelling and PowerPoint, or will I say making powerful presentations and becoming relevant in your space, this call is awful for you. Now, there's one last offer, which if you're able to wait and get the value out of this session towards the end, you see one last information. If you're interested in actually learning a skill that can help you scale your income in a short time, then I have something for you at the end of the call. So just stay with me and let's continue on this presentation. Now, Like I said, everyone literally has a story to tell, and there's always a starting point. You see me in this picture, like I said, right? I won't be surprised if I see these pictures being used as memes, right, or memes, right? Because now my beards are connecting. You can see my face probably fresher than what it used to be. We've also like pushed through our own hard times. There have been difficult times, and as you can see on my screen, these are all my colleagues way back as 2019, 2018, right? We've actually had to struggle. And I can remember this particular first presentation disaster I had. So when I joined this first organization, they had a rule of they will walk you through all their subsidiaries within the Nigerian space. And once you go through all the subsidiaries, you come back and make a presentation of your learnings to your line manager. That's the person responsible for all of us because we come in as management trainees. So after going through all the tour, we came back to the organization, and then line manager broke the news to us that unfortunately you'll be making the presentation to the CEO, to the chief marketing officer, and I think to the COO as well, to the three of them. And this is me just fresh out of school. I just got a job. They just give us an induction of maybe just 2 weeks of an induction. And you're telling me to go and stand in front of the CEO who has how many of experience to do what? Like, I was clueless. And for the 2 weeks that I had to work on this presentation, I was in constant panic because I'm someone that also I don't like to fall my hand. So I mean, don't just put me in that spot, but I will try to do as much as I can do to ensure that I learn this information perfectly. So I was put in this space, and then 2 weeks, I reached out to my sister, got some resources, got some maybe some sites where I could get some presentation. I put everything together. I think it was about 20 slides. And then the D-Day came, the day we were meant to make the presentation. And it's quite interesting, right? Because we made the 20 slide presentation. Everybody had their own 20 slide deck, and we're all ready to just land it and walk them through maybe 1 hour, giving them all the information. And then last minute, there was this level of panic anxiety. And then I think maybe probably I was the first person to present. And then the CEO brought out his phone, clicked on his timer, and told me, "AY, you have just 5 minutes to present." And this was me. I think I literally went blank because it took me 2 weeks to make a 20-slide presentation. And this is somebody now telling me to just say what I have to say in 5 minutes. Is that not being rude, in my own opinion? But I mean, this is people that value their time. So it is reinforcing the aspect of you need to be able to learn the information very fast in a very short period of time to who needs to hear it, to those that make the decision so that they can make decision faster. And I cannot overemphasize this particular skill because you will not necessarily have the leverage of 1 hour to communicate with somebody. So, for instance, I also recently got a promotion in my office in my new role, and I'm having to schedule a call with my line manager, who is more or less like a VP, a vice president of a region. And I only have the opportunity to have a call with him once in a month. That's 30 minutes in a month. So everything I've done in the last 30 days as to decision, everything that needs to be made will be communicated in 30 minutes. Now, imagine you don't have the skill of making a good presentation that communicates this information with clarity and purpose. That 30 minutes is just going to be screwed. You would lose him, he's going to lose you, and then it just becomes a space of, is this person really adding value to my team? And then you start to fade off his mind, right? But if that 30 minutes you learn the information perfectly, your name keeps on ringing in their mind. And then by the time something needs to come up, something needs to get done, your name comes up in their mind, right? And that's why I had to reinforce this, right? It took me 2 weeks to make just a 5 minutes presentation. But then they gave a remarkable comment after we made that presentation, which was one thing that made me reflect. So they gave a comment saying, after we had presented and we felt we did rubbish, the CEO said, "You guys just presented like managers." And what that made me understand that if what I did, 20 slides that I feel looks like crap, now looking back at that presentation, if they had the feeling that I presented like a manager, how much more me leveraging on this skill and perfecting it, what level of growth is it going to give me? So I had this understanding way back that it means the managers that were available then and me presenting like managers then, and I felt my presentation was crap, meaning there was a huge gap that needed to be closed. And I just took this one superpower, pounded on this skill so much, perfected this skill, and it gave me one massive growth within my career space. Now, what was the shift for me? Like I was just telling you, right? From me not knowing what to do, or from what managers used to do And the gap that I could see, what was a shift for me? I was able to discover the tools and techniques that was able to, like, first of all, cut my presentation time in half, help me to make massive, mind-blowing presentations that connect directly with my audience, and then present these ideas with clarity and purpose. And this was one thing that just kept on giving me visibility. People would want to listen. That's one thing about knowing how to present. People would want to listen to you. I've had on several occasions, you know, the funny thing is, you're not the smartest, you're not the best, but how well can you present what you know makes you the best. That's just the truth about life, right? I once wrote a post on LinkedIn about the fact that I realized that I finished as the best graduating student of my department, not because I was the smartest, not because I was the best. I knew people that were really better than me. But then I was able to actually leverage some certain skills outside of the IQ that actually gave me that leverage, right? So this is one skill within your professional space as a 9 to 5. Even as a business person, you have to pitch your ideas, right? This is one skill you have to learn. And it's just in 4 pockets. 4 pockets which are super important. The first pocket is storyboarding before every presentation. You might not understand this, but I've gotten into this conversation where someone asked me, AY, I want to make a presentation. And I tell you, if you want to make a presentation, the first thing you are to do is not to make a presentation. It looks contradictory, right? If you want to make a presentation, the first thing to do is not even to make a presentation. The first thing to do is to make a storyboard. And I joined a class recently where I think more or less like my mentor and a leader mentioned the fact that he also storyboards. And it just made me like myself better because I understand the power of storyboarding, right? So I'll give you a very interesting story. So I had the opportunity, based on my track record as well, based on maybe videos that I put out, and they've seen how I use storytelling to actually present my ideas properly. And then my global manager reached out to me that we're having a conference so and so in so and so country. But then I have so much of skill on data. Like my presentations are heavily loaded on data, which most of the time my audience will get lost. And this is why I also said the future skill, the future of work is saying data analytics, right? But truth be told, if you don't know how to connect with your audience, learning the power of knowing how to make good presentations, they will be lost. So he said, I've seen your videos, I've seen how you use storytelling to actually communicate your information clearly. I would like you to help me work on my opening speech for the conference that we're going for. And maybe the first thing probably someone will have thought, I just jump on the presentation and start working on it. No, I first of all gathered this chain of thoughts and I made a storyboard, meaning how does he want to connect the first slide to the second slide? What exactly do you want to tell your audience? Because our mind actually wanders a lot. So by the time you go from here to here, you eventually realize that your audience is lost. So you want to put that trail of thought and connect the dots between this slide to this slide to this slide to this slide. What exactly is the information you want to add? And this is the power of storyboarding. We cannot dwell so much on how important is this storyboard. Like I said, if you want to learn one important skill based on everything I've told you so far, wait till the end of the session and I have an offer for you that goes in depth into this concept of storyboarding before every presentation. Now, another thing is sourcing for already existing templates. The truth is, in this world, there's nothing new under the surface of the earth. The presentation you want to make, whatever you want to do, somewhere, somehow, somebody already created it and it already exists. Just all you have to do is still like an artist. What I mean still like an artist is once you understand the space of storyboarding, there are enough spaces where you can get existing templates, where you type in exactly what you want and what you're looking for. If I type in Animal Kingdom, I type in roadmap, I've had to do massive presentations that people see and are like, they're literally wild. And in my mind, I'm like, it's just knowledge that I have, not that I was the one that created this from scratch. So you cut your presentation time, you're able to deliver faster because you have leverage of these tools. Number 3 is knowing how to edit and rework templates in line with your storyboard. So at the end of the day, you've been able to storyboard, you have the templates. How exactly do you now edit all these templates to ensure that you can land the information properly? Now, this is also one thing which I said, if you really keen, based on everything, my testimonies, the data I've shown to you, if you're really keen on learning this particular skill, there's something definitely for you at the end of this call, right? Now, to the last and very important step, which is step 4, is This is one superpower which I feel we don't leverage well enough: the ability to tell a story. It's not just about you. And I usually tell someone, if you have to read what is on your presentation to the people or to your audience, you can as well just send them the deck. You don't need to show up. They can read the deck and understand it. So I stumble on some presentation and I see a lot of text everywhere, 1 line, 2 lines, 15 lines, and I'm like, and the person enters the presentation and starts to read out the presentation. No, that is one big mistake you don't want to make. Now, there's one super important skill, which is the ability to always tell a story. And I think so far, so good. That is what I've been doing to ensure that I can connect with the audience, to learn the information perfectly well. And this is one superpower that you want to leverage, right? You don't just want to come and your audience is lost. Now, in the space of telling a story, and this is one major part of the 4 buckets that I'm going to dwell on, while the other ones, I will show you what I have for you at the end of the call. Now, these are 2 brilliant people on my screen. I'm sure you know of Steve Jobs, and then this one other person called Mohamed Katani. I don't know how many of us watch TEDx talks, right? So you might know him. Now, Steve Jobs is one brilliant person, which during that was far back in 2007 when they introduced the iPhone. He introduced the iPhone without mentioning any specifics with respect to the details of the phone, and then they went up to sell 1.4 million phones in 3 months. He didn't mention any specs. He just told a story using the concept of an iPod, a phone, an internet communicator. Are you getting it? If you want to see the power of storytelling, go and search for Apple launches that Steve Jobs had to do for them, right? And you understand that the ability to connect with your audience. I was still watching one of his speeches today, was making people understand. If you look at the brand like Nike, Nike doesn't tell you why their brand is better than Reebok or their brand is better than another brand. They connect with stories, linking their brand to the stories of athletes. They sell the dream of an athlete as a commodity, and perfectly well, they are able to make massive sales. Because if you look at the Nike style, sometimes you might not really find anything intriguing, but you find yourself buying it. I own a Nike shoe as well. You just find yourself buying it. And this is the way they've been able to sell this commodity to you, right? And this was what Apple has been doing for the last couple of years. Now, on the other hand is Mohamed Katani. If you want to know about this guy, go and check The Power of Words on YouTube. He made a TEDx presentation, which made him to win the 2015 World Champions of Public Speaking Award. And what he tried to do is also in this space of storytelling, trying to connect with the audience. What he did was he tried to light or lit a smoke on the stage. He brought out a smoke. He was meant to give a speech in a professional setting, and he brought out a cigarette, 1 stick, and tried to light it up with matches. He got the audience roaring, like, what are you coming to do on stage? Like, what is this guy coming to do? This is a professional setting. Do you know how many CEOs are like seated here to listen to what you have to say? And then that was the connecting point for him, right? He then brought out the stats of saying, you guys are surprised that I'm trying to smoke, or you think the amount of people that die from diabetes, don't you know that the amount of people that die from diabetes are 3 times the amount of people that die from smoking? They started to believe it. Just he was able to connect with stories to the audience using some data points and then leveraging this information. He said the amount of people that die from diabetes are 3 times those that die from smoking. And then he continued and said, when he told this same story to his friends, 2 of them started smoking. Unfortunately, these statistics that he mentioned to you, he just made it up in his mind. This makes us to understand the power of presentation and storytelling, right? Tell a story and people will connect. They will believe you to the core, right? It doesn't mean you have to lie. I mean, I've had to tell stories about maybe losing my dad at some point just to better connect to the audience so that they can feel the emotions in between and then they understand your points better, right? So this is for you to understand the power of storytelling. And for everything I do, I write posts on LinkedIn, I make presentations in my office, I have to make presentations out of work. I only follow what I call the 7 storytelling structures for presentation. Everything that is ever written boils down to this basic 7 plots. And very briefly, I'm just going to walk you through it, right? Because we have to understand that for every story you want to tell, if you can follow these 7 basic plots, trust me, your audience will believe your information You will land your information with clarity and purpose, and you connect to your audience because I initially said that 90% of whatsoever we tell our audience, they get to forget. So how exactly do we keep them glued? Is by telling a story that they will never forget. And the first basic plot is overcoming a monster, right? What is this about? This is a typical heartwarming story of courage, bravery, where the hero overcomes evil against all odds, right? And this is just a showcase of your problem solving skills. And I will give you a perfect example of this story. So there was a time I had to join an interview like that. I was being interviewed for a particular role. And the question they asked me was, give us a time in your life or tell us about one challenge that you have faced and how you overcame that challenge. That was the question they pushed to me. And I had to like dig deep into my past and walk them through the story. Like there was a problem, which is learning about the monster. You understand the problem. You prepare yourself for the problem. Monster is revealed to you. You understand the problem now. You've seen the extent to which the problem exists. And this was me working on a project in my organization as at then, right? They are losing money on one particular raw material. It was pretty huge. I think as at then, maybe a loss of about 1 million per day on just one single line. And you had about 8 lines. This is the loss they make because this is one of their most expensive raw material. And then I had to work on this project. I learned about the project, trained myself, went through some research to understand what this was about. I understood the project, saw the real extent of waste that was happening in this project. I tried on the project, but it failed, literally failed, because I think we even lost more based on the changes I tried to do in the process. We lost a lot of money, but then it was still me trying to also communicate to the management that this is what we did, this is where it failed. And then I tried a different approach, which saved massive amount of money and then gave me the visibility I needed. I would say I defeated the monster, meaning I was able to crack that particular project. And these are one of the things that eventually help you to move in your career, right? When you're able to solve a problem or when you need to communicate your idea. So for instance, when I had to speak to the interview panel, I just used this storytelling approach of overcoming a monster to tell them that one single challenge, how I was able to overcome that challenge, and I landed the information perfectly. That is this aspect of overcoming a monster. Now you have the story of rag to riches. This is one story that everybody likes to listen to, whether you are anything at all. I've seen it happen or play out over and over again, and people are pretty excited to just see people coming from having nothing to becoming maybe wealthy. And I think that was way back in 2018. I was watching Big Brother. There's this guy called Lekon. In the house, he was able to say he didn't have anything, coming from a very poor background, and he ended up winning the show, right? Because people were able to buy into his story. People just liked him because of that particular story of rag to riches. So this is one thing you also want to leverage, telling a story of difficult times, showing how you can use your vulnerabilities to actually achieve results at work. This is one thing that works super well. People like to hear stories of people that were not doing so well and finally started doing well. If Dangote decides to start telling you a story now, you will listen in all day, right? You will listen to everything he has to say. Now, another part of it is the voyage and return. And this is one super interesting story because it just makes me remember the story of the prodigal son. For those that are Christians on the call, right? If you understand the moment, maybe the first time you hear the story of the prodigal son, I'm sure for those that don't listen in church or all these Bible study stories, right? The story will so interest you that who is this guy that left his father's house, collected half of his inheritance, and went to squander it in one story. You will be eager to know what eventually happened to him. That's the power of voyage and return, right? The storytelling using that method. And we listened in to understand that this guy squandered the money, did all sorts of stuff. And eventually he got to a point where he realized that, man, I have messed up, confronted darkness, that's it, living on adventurous life, transported to other world, explores new surroundings, feels uncomfortable, he ate with the swine. That's why I used the story of the prodigal son. Confronted with darkness, escapes and defeats darkness. I mean, that was when he came back home and he said he returns home wiser. Truth be told, the prodigal son actually returned home wiser because I don't see. Like, he had gone through a lot, right? So this is one super important story referencing voyage and return. And then you have the quest, which means this moral of this story is basically teamwork, right? How well are you able to collaborate? I've had to tell a story whereby I had to work with a certain amount of team members to actually achieve a result. So in the space of presentation, making the presentation is one thing, which we dwelled on a bit. Telling a story that sparks the curiosity of your audience is another thing. And like I said, everything ever written boils down to these 7 basic plots. And this is the quest, right? And then you have comedy. That is one thing. Bringing in sense of humor into your presentation is one thing that can never fade out, right? I think I joined one presentation in my office of recent. It was more or less like a global town hall, and the CFO was presenting the numbers based on performance. And truth be told, if you're having to present numbers, which is why I said that data analytics is fun, but if you cannot communicate and link these numbers to the emotion of the audience, they are lost. And the way she brought in, that's the CFO, brought in a lot of humor, jokes into the entire presentation of numbers and stuff. I can still remember the numbers, the numbers that she mentioned in this presentation, and it only made me, I just loved the presentation so much because of the way she was able to connect humor and a bit of comedy to what she was saying. And this is referencing this type of storytelling structure. Right now, before we wrap it up, there's also a space of tragedy, and I think I mentioned that I've had to also tell a story about maybe losing my dad at some point in time, because at some point in time, maybe that is what will connect best with the audience. So how exactly can you link this particular story that you have in mind? So it's not even telling a lie or something, right? You're just linking your own personal story, making them believe you so much, connecting with you so that your information sticks to them better. Now, it is super interesting to go through all these solid structures. I think the last one is the rebirth, falls under shadow, and the main purpose of this story is to change is always possible, as shows this story of a villain who finds redemption and is reborn as a better person, right? So the objective of this is basically to demonstrate that you are able to learn from others to make better choices. So you can find your space within these 7 storytelling structures for presentation, right? You can find anyone that best suits with you. If you want to make a present, maybe you are good at making presentations, but now you want to present it to your audience. Trust me, these 7 storytelling structures works perfectly well. Just check it through. If you're able to also see it, check it through and find the one that best suits your need. Right now, we have actually said a lot, but the truth is, of all the 4 pockets, which I said, storytelling, stealing like an artist using existing templates, editing and reworking templates, it is literally just the tip of the iceberg. And this is why I said, if you are able to stick here on this call up until this very moment, you are on this call because you've gotten a lot of information, right? But Rome was not built in a day, meaning you cannot actually learn everything in 1 hour of a session. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Now, I've created something super important, which is only for those who are literally interested in learning this skill and learning how to make powerful presentations that are mind-blowing, that connects with the audience, and you are super able to leverage this skill to grow your career. Like I said, why is it important? I was able to use the same skill to grow my career 7 times in 6 years, earning 10 times what I was earning when I started out my career, right? And it is in 3 phases. One is for beginners. If you are just new to the space of making presentations, you need to learn the functions, the functionalities of making a good presentation. Secondly is intermediate to advanced, where you learn the ropes of how to actually practical walkthrough of how to make a presentation from scratch, dwelling on existing structures. Where I mentioned templates. How do I storyboard? Where do I source for templates from? I have several places where I source for templates from to cut my presentation time in half, which makes me to deliver. So in my office, there's something that if a presentation needs to be made and they bring in to me, maybe close of business, there's a very high chance that I can deliver that presentation because I have existing tools that exist that reduces the time I use in making these presentations, right? And this is one super thing you want to dwell on. Now, getting into the offer of the day, which is what I've mentioned to you, all using PowerPoints. If you really want to learn this skill, there are 3 different pockets to this offer that I have for you. And drum rolls, if you are super excited about this, let the drum roll. So that this is one thing I took some time to actually create. Now, like I said, it is easy for us to walk you through this session in these 4 pockets, but you cannot understand everything in just one session, right? This is just one part of it. There is a part of how do you storyboard. I've taught you, yes, this is one skill that is important, but how do you do it? How do you learn how to storyboard? Number 2 is, where do I source for templates from if I'm to cut my presentation time in half? I know some people have jumped on presentations. You open the deck and you are literally confused as to where do I start from? If that is you and you're in that space, probably this is for you. This is definitely for you. A beginner to intermediate course that walks you through what are you going to learn in this step-by-step walkthrough of the entire PowerPoint environment? How to understand the basic functionalities, practical examples of how to use all these functions, and you have access to over 500 free downloadable templates that I've made available to you. And then for all those that sign up on this as well, you have access to premium websites where you actually have to pay for, but that has been paid by me, so you can easily just stumble on those websites and download what you need. And then you have a certificate on completion, which verifies that you've gone through this space and you understand everything on this space, right? Now, if you are already maybe a professional who is not new to the presentation environment, but you have pretty much of a knowledge about it, but probably this is for intermediate to advanced, right? And this is where I literally teach you how to storyboard. I take you through several practical walkthroughs of how to create presentations from scratch. For instance, you have to create a one-pager presentation. This is where you get to learn it. For instance, you have to create a full presentation from scratch. How do you storyboard? How do you get the right template that fits into the theme of the conversation you want to talk about, right? So for instance, I had to make a presentation on something animal related, and I typed into that website, Animal Kingdom, and it gave me a deck that practically represented what I wanted to give to my audience. And I was able to deliver. I mean, once you get into that presentation, you get the feel, you're able to connect the information the person is giving to the audience with the slide. You want to be able to connect that presentation, right? And for instance, you wouldn't expect me, the presentation I'm showing to you now, to have to create every little bit of it from scratch, this brush-like, because I have access to the tools that exist to create this thing in just a very short period of time, right? So if you are not new to the environment and you really are interested in learning this skill, so the link is going to be dropped on the chat section as well. If you're interested for the beginner, all well and good, the link is going to be dropped there. If you're interested for the intermediate to advanced, the link to auto purchasing this course is also going to be dropped there. Now, which is the most recommended version that I would like to give to you guys, right? This is the most recommended. I always recommend this. The full package, which is from beginner directly to advanced. So sometimes you might feel, yes, I'm already conversant with the environment, but trust me, even for me, at some point in time, I realized that as much as I feel I was conversant with the basics, I realized that I also didn't know so much, right? And this is where you also want to leverage that. As much as you feel that you know, there are so many functions that if you don't know, leveraging the skill from intermediate to advanced might be quite difficult for you. So yes, you might say I'm a beginner. You might say I'm conversant with the PowerPoint environment. But then for some time, it is needed for you to also do a quick walkthrough of those functionalities that might have just kept your mind to help you to do this thing in a very short period of time. There are so many quick tricks that you can apply within making a presentation that gives you the space of communicating this information, making it connect to the audience better, right? Space of using animated icons, something that actually connects to the audience. This is what you want to leverage. And like I said, this is one thing that I recommend so much. The link to this is also going to be dropped in the group, right? So if you're interested in this, this is meant to and would most likely just be available for a short period of time as well for this particular price, right? So we're slashing the price. And if you look at the price for the individual courses, like I showed you, each of them will go for about $75 per course. But then for the combined, which I said is the most recommended, is going for $54.99 as against what it will be for $100 initially, right? So you want to leverage this. You want to go with this. Please just jump on this opportunity as fast as you can and start learning. I will definitely see you in class, because for this course as well, you have direct access to me for me to give you practical walkthrough. Whatever you don't understand, you give you a practical walkthrough of how to go about it. So this is one thing you want to leverage. Now, a lot has been said, and it will make no sense if you don't take action, right? How do you want to leverage this skill to move from where you are, point A, to point B? There's a book I was referencing earlier. What got you here will not get you there. So how do you move from where you are to where you want to be? Are you a fresh graduate or you're still in school and you want to master the art of making powerful presentations that connect to the audience? This is one opportunity you don't want to miss. Trust me. Just jump on the link, sign up, and start learning. And I'm going to see you in class. Now, if you're also an existing professional who looks to maybe switch between jobs, the jobs of nowadays are not just going to call you on interview sessions and start asking you questions. They will tell you most of the time to work on case studies. So as much as this teaches how to maybe prepare the case study, you are good. The question now becomes, how do you present to the audience? How does your presentation communicate that good in you to the audience that they believe you so much and they're able to bring you on board to the organization? So that's one thing if you're looking to also change jobs. Now, the last part of it is you are within your current organization and you're wondering why you are not actually moving up the career ladder. Yes, that can actually be the case for you, right? You are wondering why you're not moving up the career ladder. It might be what got you here cannot get you there. They are looking for people, like I said, 50% of C-suite executives spend 50% of their time. Most of them spend 50% of their time trying to convince or present using presentations, right? Because they are not going to go into the details of getting the work done. So whatever information they have, they are presenting to the board, investors, the R&D team, everything like that, are trying to communicate as to why do we need to take this decision? And that's the power of presentation making, right? This is why you need to leverage this skill. So if you're at that point where you need to move up the career ladder within your current organization, or even moving into another organization, or you're just starting out in your career, just leaving school as well, this is one skill you want to leverage. All that being said, is also good for you to know that you can still reach out to me or reach out to us on our pages or send us an email if you feel there's more to what you want to learn. But most importantly, it would make no sense if you take no action. Like I said, this is the most recommended thing you would have on this session today. You have several other options to go for. You have the beginner. You feel I'm just new to this space. I really don't know much about this space, but I would really like to jump on it. The beginner might be good for you. Intermediate to advanced is also an option. Yes, you know a bit about the presentation space, but some of the functions which seems to be foundational might be missing somewhere, and you want to leverage that. This might always also be good for you. But why take it in half when you can actually sum both together? Take a full-fledged from beginner to advanced and master this art particularly. Now, we've said so much. Drop your comments and tell me what this has been for you. Just maybe one word. I can see this is very detailed. I can also see people already engaging the link and signing up already. I mean, I'm super excited that you guys find this as valuable, right? I mean, I'm also trying to track to see if this actually makes sense to a lot of you, right? So drop your comments. What do you think about this? How do you see this particular session as we wrap up the entire session? Yeah, I can see, wow, a lot of people are clicking to register for this. I can see the engagement link on the post. So you guys are buying the idea of actually going for the full package. That makes a lot of sense. But if you're a beginner, yeah, because I can see some people also clicking for beginner, right? That makes a lot of sense. If you feel I don't want to overload myself so much, let me start with beginner. Yes, you can still go with that. And if you feel I want to go with just the intermediate, that's all good for you. But the major thing is if you can leverage the full package, that makes a lot of sense. So that's what you have it for tonight, guys. Thank you so much. I remain Ayomide Otokiti, your presentation and visualization expert. Like I said, there's this guy, this dwarf in Game of Thrones. He said, if you accept your identity for who you are, nobody can use it against you. And that's why I'm telling you, I'm a presentation and visualization expert. I'm going to tell you that with my full chest, right? Because I've worked on presentations for so many years. I've perfected the act of making powerful presentations. So if you feel this was super insightful, I can see comments coming in, insightful, super insightful. Thank you so much for giving these comments. I'm super excited that this was a space of value for you as well. Drop in your comments. Also, do well to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Follow the LinkedIn page. Follow the Instagram page. Do well to subscribe. And then we'll definitely drop in so many information for you guys. But for today, this is what is so important. It is going to make no sense if you don't take action, right? So this is on a normal day, we're going to put this out for 100 USD. We're going to be slashing this for just 54.99, and it's also going to be available for just a short period of time. So thank you very much, guys. It was an insightful session speaking to you guys about something which I'm really passionate about, something that has helped me to grow my career in just a space of 6 years, growing my career 7 times, increasing my income 10 times. Do you want to increase your income 10 times in just a short period of time? If yes is the case, then jump right on this offer and I will meet you guys in class. Thank you very much once again. I remain your amiable PowerPoint presentation and visualization expert. See you guys in class, guys. Bye.
Hey guys, I'm super excited to have you here today. Thanks for joining this training. It's about to be an eye-opening session. But before we dive in, let me quickly introduce myself so you know what exactly and why exactly this is worth your time. Back in 2018, fresh out of college, I was working in a construction company, earning little to nothing, struggling to actually communicate my ideas. I knew I had value to offer, but every time I stood in front of a room, my words practically fell flat. My ideas, my slides were literally a mess. And it took me 2 whole weeks to prepare a 5 minutes presentation back in 2018. Still, nobody really listened. Now, fast forward to now, this one skill changed everything. I've grown my career 7 times in just 6 years. I've grown from that struggling employee to a global talent, presented to leaders across different continents. To surprise you that my first passport only had 1 stamp, and that was Benin Republic. But in just the last 3 years, I've presented in 6 countries across Africa, Asia, and Europe. But the biggest win, I've been invited into rooms I never thought I would enter. Not just because I had something valuable to say actually, but because I learned how to present in a way that made people listen. Today, I'm pulling back the curtain and showing you exactly how I did it, step by step. No fluff, no complicated stories or theories, but just real practical strategies that you can start using immediately. So stick with me to the end, pay close attention, and I promise you'll walk away with something that could completely transform your career. All right, guys, let's get started.